Make some sourdough with me. This is not a tutorial. This is only like my 6th or 7th loaf, but I thought it would be fun to take you along from start to finish, and I'm gonna fit it all in one video. I just took my starter out of the fridge. I'm gonna pour like half of it out. Poured half of it out. My starter had been in the fridge for like 4 days before I just pulled it out right now. Just do the same amount of flour as there is starter. Probably about like half cup of starter, so I'm gonna do a half cup of flour. And then like a little less than a half cup of water. I'm hoping that this will be ready to use by tonight so that I can bake tomorrow, but we'll see. I need a little bit more water. Okay, it's all mixed up, nice and sticky, kind of thick. First started sourdough, I feel like my starter was a little bit too thin, so I've been adding a little bit less water, and that's been better for me. Should have probably used a new jar. It doesn't have to be perfect, and this video is not to stress you out because honestly, everybody does it so differently and everybody gets loaves of bread, so however you do it. That's what I've learned about sourdough. A rubber band like right at the top of it. I'll be back. The lid like loosely on it. Like that helps a lot. I'll be back once this is nice and active and bubbly. Okay, it's the next day. I didn't have time yesterday to make it. Ended up just pouring some of my starter out yesterday and then refeeding it, but now we're ready. I use a food scale. I feel like it makes it so much easier. Put my bowl on and then zero the scale out. I'm gonna double this recipe. It takes so much time and work, so I always just double it and make 2 loaves. I'm also gonna give these loaves to some of Sean's co-workers. I have 150 grams for 1 starter, so I'm gonna double that. So I'm just gonna pour it out until I see 300 on the scale. 300 grams in there. And then I usually do 350 grams for 1 loaf, so I'm doubling that, so 700 grams of warm water. Whoops, I need to zero this out. Put too much, but that's fine. I'm just gonna scoop a little bit out. I saw somebody say online that if your starter is floating in the water, that's when you know it's ready, and mine is floating. I have one of those fancy sourdough whisk cute little things. I want to get one, but for now I just use a regular silicone one, and I'm going to mix this together until all the starter is like dissolved in the water. Milky water right now. I like to use bread flour. I've done it with all-purpose flour, but I just feel like bread flour is a little bit better. And I usually do 500 grams of flour, so I'm going to double it and do 1,000 grams and just dump this in until it hits 1,000. Hopefully I have enough. I only have 800 of bread flour, so I'm just gonna add a little bit of all-purpose. We'll see how it goes. This is the brand of regular flour and bread flour I get the organic one. I do 10 grams of salt, but I'm gonna do 20 since we're making 2. This is the best salt, and they have it at Costco right now. Oh, I gotta zero it out. 20 grams of salt. Now we can ditch the scale. I start mixing it with a silicone little spatula, but then I just use my hands after because it's easier. Take all my rings off and go in with my hands. Like fold it and mush it all together. Your dough is definitely going to be like shaggy, they call it. My hand's a little bit wet because it's very sticky. Okay, it's all mixed up, and as you can tell, it's very shaggy, which is what you want. Cover this with a kitchen towel for about 30 minutes, and then we'll do our first set of stretch and pulls. I'll be back. Okay, it's 30 minutes later, so now we do our first round of stretch and folds. I'm just gonna get my hands a little bit wet so that the dough won't stick to my hands, but a stretch and fold, basically, you go all the way around the dough, you grab it, stretch it, don't let it break, just let it break. And then you go all the way around and do that. You do 4 different rounds with 30 minutes in between. There's our dough right now. Each time you do it, it'll get smoother and smoother. I'm gonna wash my hands. Cover it up again, leave it on the counter, set a timer for 30 minutes, and do your next round of stretch and fold. Timer just went off, so it's round 2 for stretch and folds. Stretch, fold. I didn't do sourdough for the longest time because I just overthought it. Like, I'm not the biggest, like, I don't love cooking or baking, but there's something about sourdough. I am loving it. So give it a try. If you're hesitant, but you're interested, start it, because I wish I started earlier. And it's starting to look more and more silky. Cover it with a towel, set another timer for 30 minutes, and we'll be back. Okay, it's time for our third stretch and pull. It's looking so good. Oh, I didn't get my hands wet. Get your hands wet or else it'll stick to you. Stretch and fold. Get bubbly already, that's a good sign. Yours is like getting tougher to do, like that. Pick the whole dough up and just like let it fold under itself. Let this sit with a towel over it. We have one more stretch and fold. Alexa, set timer for 30 minutes. It's time for our final stretch and pull. It's looking so good. My hands are wet. Same thing, stretch, fold, and this will be the last one. She is beauty, she is grace. All 4 sets of stretch and fold are done to let it sit uncovered for like 30 minutes before I shape the dough. It's been sitting for about 30 minutes. I'm just gonna sprinkle a little bit of flour on my counter. I shape the dough now. Again, this is not a tutorial. This is just how I do sourdough. I'm gonna dump my dough out. This is gonna be 2 loaves, so I'm gonna cut it in half. I know a lot of people weigh it to get the exact amount, but I just eyeball it. It'll be fine. Set one aside, start the shaping. You want to try to make a rectangle with it as best you can. I've been liking, whoops, try not to rip it. I've been liking making smaller loaves. I don't know, I feel like we just go back through them a little bit faster and then you can get 2 out of it. I have a rectangle, take one side, fold it over, take the other side, fold it over. I like to pinch the ends a little bit. And then you just roll it, roll it, roll it, slash fold it. And then on each of the ends, you want to pinch those together just so that they stay all in one. Just keep pinching until it's like all sealed up. Forward, rotate it and pull it back to you. And this just creates like the tension on top. So you do that until you have a nice amount of tension. Bubbling, look how cute. Flour, I have a clean bowl here. Put some flour down so that it doesn't stick. Take your little loaf and I flip it upside down. And then you can see there's like a little bit of separating happening, so just pinch again. It goes in the fridge for like 8 to 14 hours, so we won't bake this until tomorrow. That one's done. Now we do the same thing to the next loaf. Sourdough pros, what is this step called? Pour down in this bowl. I'm just gonna use this bowl that I used before. Both of these are gonna get covered with a towel and they're gonna go in the fridge for 8 to 14 hours. It's 5:45 right now. 8 hours would be like in the middle of the night, so I'm just gonna do it first thing in the morning when I wake up, which is when I will see you again, that these are going in the fridge. Good morning, it's time to actually bake the sourdough. I use my cast iron Dutch oven to cook my sourdough in. I turn the oven on to 500 and put this pan in and let it preheat in the oven and get really hot for like 20 minutes. The Dutch oven has been preheating in the oven for about 20 minutes now. I have parchment paper here. I'm just gonna take the first loaf, flip it over, and just kind of naturally let it fall out on the parchment paper. Bread is on the parchment paper. I finally got a little scoring tool. I was using a knife before, and this is so much easier. So I'm just gonna score it. I don't do anything fancy. I usually just do like a typical little line in it. I've done this before, but I'm just gonna sprinkle a tiny bit of flour on top. It'll be fine, don't worry. I'm gonna turn the oven down to 450. So buy the parchment paper and plop it in. Oven for 20 minutes with the lid on. After the 20 minutes, I'm going to take the lid off, turn the oven down to 400 and do 40 minutes with the lid off. Alexa, set timer for 20 minutes. 20-minute timer went off. I'm just going to turn it down to 400 and take the lid off. Lid is coming off. Sneak peek. It's ready. It's beautiful. Seeing this makes it all worth it. Look how freaking beautiful this is. Wow. We did that. We really did that. It's really hot, but it's perfect. And now we do it one more time. I'm just gonna reuse the same parchment paper, flip it over, score it, bake it, and I'll show you the final results of both loaves, but it's so rewarding. Here's the before. Okay, so I actually forgot to turn the oven down from 450 to 400 for the last little bit with the lid off, but you know what? This still looks freaking delicious. I'm really bummed I can't cut into these and show you the amazing inside because I'm gifting them, but that's how I do my sourdough. Let me know if you want more sourdough content because I feel like I'm always making it. One more little look at these. They smell delicious.